Hello.
Hey there. Wonderful.
Hey, Tony. Welcome to WTF is RevOps. So excited to have you today. Hello to everyone that is joining on AirMeet and on LinkedIn. Y'all might be a little confused because normally Molly is the host, but she's out of town this week, so I'm here. But super excited to be on with you, Tony. We have so much to talk about. Just to do some quick introductions. So if you guys haven't seen me on a live stream before, my name is Adriana. I'm the community manager here at RevGenius. We're a totally free community for revenue professionals in tech. So you can totally join if you're in RevOps, but also sales, marketing, success, all of that. So if you do want to check that out, you can go to revgenius.com. Tony, who is our guest today, is CEO at Growblocks and is a two-time CRO. I will let you tell everyone a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adriana. And yeah, and I think Molly's in Mexico or something, enjoying the sun and the break. I'm sure.
Must be nice. It's raining and cold here, so.
So I mean, I'm calling in from Copenhagen, Denmark, and it's raining and
Mm,
cold all the time. Besides, like 2 months in the year, so it's
oh my gosh.
I'm kind of used to that.
Mm,
No, but again, thanks for having me here. Really, it's really a pleasure to kind of join you guys here. Yeah, no, I'm Tony, and kind of for the the topic here, path to becoming CRO. So I think my journey really is a maybe one of the more odd journeys, kind of becoming a CRO in that sense. So it's really the usually you have this, hey, you join an organization as an SDR, and then you become an AE, and then you're a sales manager, and then you're VP sales, and then it's like, okay, so how can we upgrade you? And then it's like, well, let's make you the CRO, right?
mm,
So that's the usual journey. That's the usual journey that I've seen. I think my journey was a little bit different. So I really came from this RevOps perspective, right? Kind of, I was super lucky to join a company super early on, when we were like 5 or 6 different people, right? So and I
oh
did
wow.
actually back then I did lead generation. So it was a
Mm,
social media management platform I was working for. And I was
mm,
basically scouring Facebook for companies that had like company pages on Facebook. And then I tried to figure out who the social media man. Basically, I was doing Cognism
mm,
and Zoom Info just
yeah.
just manually, right?
Yeah.
And and I was really really bad at this actually. And very quickly they actually wanted to fire me because I was really shit at this.
Oh no.
And luckily I had some other skills I could bring to the table. And for whatever reason, I stumbled into this revenue operations thing.
Mm,
And back then we didn't. I feel super old now, right? So this is 2012, 2013. So I've been doing SaaS now for 10, 11 years or something like this.
mm,
Um, but back then it was very much, hey, someone needs to manage the CRM and then the commissions and the report, and
mm,
we didn't even call me sales operations. We called me special operations. Because I don't know, people felt more free with their different titles back then.
mm,
But kind of did all of that different stuff. Then the company grew and grew and grew, and everything was awesome. And once we were very focused on the sales side, then obviously marketing wanted to have the similar thing, and
mm,
CS wanted to have a similar thing. And actually, it's my co-founder here at Growblocks and I. We were kind of working in Falcon at the time. We were sitting down, um, and we are thinking, okay, so what? So first of all, this thing needs to be under one umbrella. It's silly
yeah.
that you have a sales operations and a marketing operations, and they should be super tightly combined and working kind of much more than just side by side, and reporting into the sales VP or the marketing VP. Um, and we were kind of getting to the conclusion this whole thing needs to be one thing, and we are basically sitting there and trying to figure out what should we call this thing, because back then revenue operations wasn't such a big word yet. And we're like, well, I don't think this RevOps thing is going to stick. I think it's going to be commercial operations. So we ended up calling ourselves commercial operations instead of RevOps, and it was obviously
Mm,
stupid. And now kind of the world turned around, right? And then spend a lot of time, figuring out how to build the engine from a RevOps perspective. Spent some time in the US, did like 3 years in New York, building up the US office and then building out the US market for the company I was with. And up on my return back to Europe, actually my CEO approached me and was like, "Hey, obviously you're kind of running the RevOps piece." At the point, I had the SDRs, I had performance marketing actually also already, and it felt almost natural for us. It was a leap for sure, but it felt almost natural for us to then say, "Hey, do the whole CRO thing, kind of the full end-to-end thing, right? All marketing, all sales, all CS, and revenue operations globally." And I think at the time when I took over, it was like around 15 million in ARR. When I left, which was after the exit, it was then 50 million. Then I did the
Wow.
whole thing again with another company. It was also CRO. We exited this one again. Great. And basically kind of have like 2 exits on my rep sheet, and really kind of approach this CRO piece from like a very much a revenue operations angle, right? Which, more than happy to talk more about this. But I think this is what maybe sets me a little bit apart from some of the other CRO profiles that some people here might have encountered at some point.
Yeah. Okay. So lots that I want to unpack here. But I do kind of want to touch on what you just mentioned, which is like if you're approaching this role from a RevOps perspective, like how does that look different than someone who has a sales background? And additionally, companies, you did kind of mention that a lot of people who get into these CRO roles do have sales backgrounds. Is that something companies are typically looking for? Like, how do you kind of navigate having a different background than a lot of people who would traditionally do this role?
Yeah. So I might have forgotten the first question, but let's just, you know what, you just repeat this one in a second. So kind of, sales background, how's that
Mm,
an obstacle? I think what a lot of people might tell you, and especially salespeople will tell you, is like, "Hey, revenue operations, you can't be the one owning the whole number because you haven't carried a quota before."
mm,
That's a very common objection, and I know that there are many sales so RevOps folks that have like an AE background or an
mm,
SDR background that to a degree kind of can claim that they have owned a number. But I hear this a lot still. In my case, it was a little bit different. So already as VP commercial operations back then, I basically
mm,
was comped against the full number and was like responsible in that sense for that. Um, but I gotta say, when I obviously kind of growing up in that one organization, it felt natural. I think then the step to the next gig wasn't very much so. Can you then do our enterprise sales and can you do
mm,
some of these things? And I was like, no, i'm I'm probably not the right guy to run your enterprise AE process, but I'll hire a fantastic person for that, right? And
yeah.
I think now after both of those cases, I'm kind of over this hump of like, we don't know, can he do it? It's like very proven, right? And I
Mm,
think that's why maybe it's less of an it's an issue now to not be kind of the sales guy at heart. I think, and if I remember correctly now, and I'm tying in your first question, maybe, the advantage almost comes from, I believe, not having that. So this is sometimes my claim. I believe that
mm,
RevOps is actually the better school to become CRO than
mm,
it is sales, and the
mm,
reason for that is yeah, exactly, and the reason for that is and you know what, I'm going to use some examples, and they're kind of going in the extremes, and it's not usually not how it is, but it just illustrates the point, right? So if you
mm,
are a sales first CRO, you sometimes have the tendency to optimize marketing and CS around sales, right? Kind of, you have no power
mm,
about over all of these 3 different departments, and you might want to kind of optimize sales by optimizing CS and marketing around them, which
mm,
then usually ends up being a really bad fit for marketing and a really bad fit for CS, right? Because what you're
yeah.
going to do is, on the marketing side, you're going to create all kinds of ways to choke the funnel, to basically only have leads come through that are ready for a DocuSign, right? Kind of, that's basically
Mm,
how you're then going to
yeah.
be approaching, and it's like, hey, the quality isn't good enough, we can't have those leads, marketing need to do a better job, right? And that in itself is maybe not great for the revenue number overall, but it makes
Mm,
sales feel good and look good, right? And then on the flip side, you might then also, choking on the input, but
mm,
then, releasing on the output, basically saying, maybe it's not a great customer, but, you know, what do you say? Yes, we'll have to take it, right? I think and by the way, they're fantastic CROs from a sales background that don't think like this. Again, I'm just, painting a picture here. I
mm,
think what, from a RevOps perspective, is different is you are looking at this whole thing end to end. You don't have necessarily a favorite, marketing, sales, or CS.
yeah.
You are very objectively speaking, optimizing for the revenue number in the end. You don't care who needs to do what in order to achieve
Mm,
that. And I also think you don't have because you're not really good in either of these things. As a RevOps person, you're not really good at sales, you're not good at marketing, you're not good at CS. You kind of bring a different approach to the table to the leaders that you're working with, right? It's
mm,
really a let's work together on how to figure out how to, run marketing better, run CS better, and so forth. Instead of having this like, I actually know how this works. You need to do it like this and so forth.
yeah.
So I feel you come like with a bit of a more of an open mind maybe to that problem, which I believe is probably helping the engine overall to perform
Mm.
better.
Awesome. Love that. I do just want to let everyone know if you have any questions for Tony about RevOps career paths or becoming a CEO or his own experience as a founder, definitely drop them in the chat. He would love to answer any questions for you. But okay, so I do kind of want to get into a little bit more of the like specific career paths that people can take
Mm-hmm.
within RevOps if they really do see themselves like becoming more of a leader in the space, having like ambitions to have a C-suite position at some point in the future. What can that kind of look like, or what can
Mm-hmm.
people sort of plan towards to get there?
Yeah. So I think kind of if you're thinking just, RevOps for now, kind of let me answer maybe this first. You have this tendency that the RevOps title is usually being taken by the sales ops person, if you will. Kind of sales ops is very dominant in the RevOps arena, and even there you have this. I'm a marketing ops person. I can't be the RevOps person. You have kind of the same
Mm,
weird reasoning, sometimes going on. And I think all of this is crap. All of this is crap. It has nothing to do with that. I think the reason why you should be going from a silo ops to a revenue ops is that you have either ambitions or you already have an understanding of the workings of the engine overall, so meaning traffic to churn, the whole thing. And not only the opportunity created to opportunity close one piece, or the traffic to opportunity created piece or whatever, but really having an ambition and trying to understand the whole picture.
mm,
And then that is kind of the pyramid within RevOps, how I sometimes think about it. And then on top of that, it's I think what a true detractors for RevOps to kind
mm,
of take a further up role. And I'm I'm not quite, I haven't made up my mind if I'm a fan of this chief revenue ops officer thing. I'm not quite sure about
mm,
that yet. But that aside, the COO, CRO, CCO kind of trajectory. What truly is maybe speaking against RevOps taking this, and this is I think something that we as RevOps folks need to just work on and be better at, is um, not not having talked to many prospects and customers. I think
mm,
that's a mistake actually,
yeah.
right? So I think a lot of RevOps folks try and stay away from that. They're trying to be behind the scenes and helping, and they see very much the image connect with that. And I think having an understanding of the engine without having understanding of the end user being kind of a customer in that sense, I
Mm,
think that's a problem actually, and that might disqualify you from taking that step up, I believe, right?
mm,
And similar things around market positioning and competitive pieces, and as RevOps we usually don't think about it. Those are all external factors, right? Kind
yeah.
of other people think about that. We think about the wiring inside, and I think those are things that folks um, should be proactively sometimes tackling, right? So I had a fantastic call with, right? So I had a
Mhm.
fantastic call with previous VP go-to-market operations from Freshworks,
Mhm.
and she was actually talking. She was actually kind of VP go-to-market Freshworks, which is like, I don't know, they're like a massive company, and she's taking a step away from that role and is now I
Hmm.
think director for CS or something like that for a specific
Got
region.
it.
And we had kind of a similar conversation about this, and her point was, now that she's taken the step to be a customer facing role and a
Mhm.
customer facing leader, she was actually saying that it felt really silly for her, and it's maybe not the exact words kind of she chose, but it felt like a missed opportunity for her to only now get exposed to the customer and only now kind of hear the actual customer problems.
Yeah.
And she was actually even saying that now that she kind of knows what's going on really on the customer and the end user side, she can so much better connect that back to what we maybe need to change in the product, what we need to change in the process, and so forth. And
Mhm.
her point was that this RevOps mind of, oh, the customer isn't happy, it's my problem. It's a little bit like, hey, the salesperson doesn't understand something in the CRM. It's because I haven't explained it well enough, right? This is kind of a occupational disease of RevOps. A salesperson would never think like that, like never.
It's true.
Um, but but if you have that mindset and you suddenly apply it to the customer,
Yeah.
she was basically saying that's like extremely powerful, right? So how
Mhm.
can I even prevent potential customers and or users to even have that problem in the first place? And
Yeah.
now you have not only internal tools and processes, but even if your product as a tool to try and alleviate that problem from the customer, right?
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. I do want to answer this question that we got on LinkedIn. So, someone, I think you touched on this a little bit already, but just to get a little bit more specific, someone asked,
Yep.
what's the main difference between sales ops and revenue ops?
Yeah. So think about it like in a pyramid. So you have, on the bottom of the pyramid, you have the three different functions: marketing operations, sales operations, CS operations, especially in a SaaS business. And they are working specifically on optimizing that specific function, that silo,
Mhm.
right? Sales operations will focus a lot on the CRM, which is usually Salesforce or HubSpot, will focus a lot on reporting for sales, on commissions that need to be either commission plans being created or calculated, territory management, CPQ. I don't know. The alphabet kind of goes on in that case.
Mhm.
Marketing operations will have different pieces, right? They kind of have a much more scattered landscape of tools that they're trying to somewhat glue together and integrate. There's also lots of reporting going on, and CS, again, focusing on the CS role, right? Revenue operations is basically the umbrella where each of these silo operations, report to and kind of get a, let's just call it like a steering from them on like how this whole thing actually should work together. Because when you think about it, um, an organization might say, hey, we have functions, which is marketing, sales, and CS, and we are thinking about those functions and we need to optimize those functions. But a user, a customer, they don't think about, now I'm talking to marketing, and now I'm talking to sales, now I'm talking to CS. They're just thinking, now I'm talking to the company ABC, right?
Mhm.
And they basically just want to have a smooth process from marketing to sales to CS without them needing to understand any of these things. And if
Yeah.
you don't have a steering that happens on top of these different silos, if you don't have someone trying to coordinate,
Yeah.
if you basically have an orchestra that's playing at the same time but not playing together, it's going to
Mhm.
be a shitty experience for the audience, right? And that's what revenue wow, finally I used that metaphor here. But that's what revenue operations is about to a degree, right? They're trying to make
Mhm.
sure that all of these different functions that until recently, and in many organizations that's still the case, they've never really talked to one another,
Mhm.
unless they had to. And revenue operations as a kind of an idea is trying to bring these things closer together, right?
Got it. So I do kind of want to just backtrack a little bit and kind of talk about like what are the unique challenges of kind of figuring out your career path in RevOps, especially compared to something, like sales that is a little bit more linear, kind of seems to have sort of like you mentioned, like a specific trajectory.
Yeah. So I think so this is one of those it's almost kind of an obstacle also for you to become a leader, maybe even forgot this,
Mhm.
right? Revenue operations usually isn't a volume role, right? You
Yeah.
usually don't have 50 RevOps and sales ops people in the team unless you're a company of 1,000 or something like this.
Hmm.
Um, and that then sometimes carries with it, well, you're only leading a team of 5, you don't really have leadership experience, so you
Yeah.
taking over a team of 200, we don't really see it. Um,
Mhm.
and because you have so much volume on, for example, the sales side, um, the career path that management can plot is super straightforward, and there's so many
Mhm.
proof points of SDRs that are now a VP of sales, and they can kind of
Yeah.
show this kind of very clearly. Um, and it can be done because you have a lot of volume, you have a lot of turnover. Basically, it's very predictable. Kind of, you don't know who
Mhm.
is going to be promoted to AE, but some will, right? And you don't know who is going to be the manager, but one person will probably be that. On
Mhm.
the revenue operations side, you don't have that. You don't have that luxury. And what I'm seeing is um, growing up within revenue operations in an organization. I think usually that works best with also the organization growing a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah. Otherwise, you go into those scenarios of needing to wait when there's a seat opening up and then growing into that.
Yeah.
Um, I would say the standard career path though is you start as a system or Salesforce admin, then you go more into an operational track of doing the commissions, the reporting, and so forth. And then you go into a revenue operations layer that might be head of RevOps or so forth, or VP of revenue operations, which then actually also gives you a seat at the executive table, right?
Mhm.
And unfortunately, fortunately, the career path sometimes also created by just joining another company. So very
Yeah.
often, and then there's this whole thing around LinkedIn and head of revenue operations, this new trending title and growing like crazy. What it really also means is, well, wait a minute, where are all of those people that are head of RevOps that can jump into those open roles, right? And the answer is there aren't many, right? And that's why you're probably going to see lots of those consultancies kind of jumping up and kind of RevOps consultancies trying to kind of
Mm.
satisfy that market need.
Yeah.
And then you will see a lot of companies taking a gamble on maybe someone that is unproven as a revenue operations leader, but proven as a revenue operations individual contributor, for example, right?
Mhm.
And then I think that will keep happening. I think.
So can you talk to us? You did briefly touch on this, but kind of the differences between opting to work in RevOps at like a really small startup versus a larger company that's already a little bit more established, and kind of the pros and cons of like growing and developing with each of those.
Yeah. So if you start at a smaller company as RevOps, first of all, I would make sure you don't start too small. I think you need to be 100 people before they really need a revenue operations role. Otherwise, you're being perceived as a very expensive hire when times
Got
get tough,
it.
and times are getting tough right now, right? So
Yeah.
you don't wanna be in that situation.
Mhm.
Then small organizations have the issue that they might grow and explode, and everything is great. I mean, you can ride that wave, or they have the problem of dying, right? That's you still have those two problems, right? And even sometimes you have organizations that are not really growing, that are also not really dead, they're kind of stagnating,
Mm.
and then sometimes also not that fun potentially, right?
Yeah.
And then joining a larger organization as RevOps, Sales Ops, I think what I'm seeing there is it will just take a little bit longer to work yourself through the different ranks of that,
Mm.
right? And again, so I think this is the magic trick of those fast growing startups, and why this is so interesting is if you're in an established company and the permit is built out on the sales ops or revenue operations side, which it might be already, getting the upgrade requires someone to leave, either being promoted upwards and somewhere else, or leaving the company or being fired. Those are the only change moments you can wait for then jumping into that slot. If you're part of a growing or massively growing organization, it's not like you need to wait around until something happens on the personnel side on top of you. Basically, those opportunities will just open up, and you'll be there, you'll be available. And if you're doing a good job, you'll get the opportunity to jump into this, right? And so this is, I think, but very much, I mean, this assessment is very much the same between any other role that decides between startup and corporate, if you will. I think if you have other differences between those two stages of company can be, well, you're building up the whole infrastructure from scratch, which can be exciting. And on the flip side, if you're joining a larger corporate, maybe that hasn't so much experience yet with revenue operations, you will likely do 1 or 2 years of cleanup work. And I've seen this now a couple of times. You're basically the janitor for 2 years, right? You have all of those great ideas about, hey, we want to, add those tools and it's going to be fantastic. And you have this, this clean idea of everything, but it's going to end up being, what is an opportunity definition? And then you try and get this through to a 1,000 people organization, and it's going to take you 6 months to kind of get there. And that might be, depends on who you are as a person, like a frustration level that you might need to work through, right? But I think those would be probably the two main pieces I would be leaning on.
Awesome. Okay, so we did get a few more questions in the chat, so I want to make sure that we answer these. Devin asked, can you be successful as a one-person RevOps team?
Yeah, I mean, so context obviously would be super helpful here. I think, and really kind of the question for me, as far as I see it, is like, are you being set up for success or failure almost with that kind of job description, right? I think the 150 people person company, I think this is on the, it would be great to have at least 2 people, right? Because the idea now is that as the organization is 150 people and, the commercial organization will have a certain size, a lot of stuff needs to be implemented and a lot of stuff needs to be thought through. A lot of change needs to be driven, right? And what you as a RevOps person ideally want to have is that some of the implementation work, meaning the work that needs to be done in sales, in your CRM or in your marketing automation or wherever, can be outsourced to someone, right? And what I would really advise, if you can find the budget, or maybe you can outsource it, there, some of those folks, try and get rid of, unless you really enjoy it, obviously, but try and get rid of the system administration piece. I think that would be the first thing I'll park, and give someone else who has good understanding and experience in this, and that might kind of open you up. And to flip it around and really answer your question, I think you can be successful depending on the definition of success, but you will just need to tell your boss that everything will just be slower, right? So sometimes I wouldn't pitch revenue operations as a efficiency driver all the time. A lot of times, we're positioning ourselves as, the efficiency machine, which is true. But in many cases, we're also a change management team, right? We are the ability to drive change in the organization, and that change sometimes happens to live in systems and processes and data, which is kind of our bread and butter. So if you are a one-person team, you can only drive so much change, right? And basically the investment to your boss would be like, hey, do you want to jump to that newer state faster? If yes, then you need to kind of upgrade the team here. And I would probably do the first piece. I would probably would do like a systems person, system admin or something to help with that.
Yeah.
I hope that was useful.
Makes a lot of sense. Kanad, I hope I'm saying that right, it says, I'm a marketing ops person at my company. What do I need to learn to become a RevOps person?
Yeah. I think, and you know what? It's a little bit funny. If you were to be a sales ops person, you would not ask that question. You would just like, hey, I'm a RevOps person today. as a marketing operations person, you're kind of, oh, what do I need to learn? I think anyone in any of those siloed functional operations roles,
Mm,
what all of you should be thinking about is how does the full engine work? So end to end, traffic to churn, how does this whole thing hang together? Not only from like funnel steps and metrics, but also what are the different roles in those
mm,
funnel steps that are working towards it? What's the role of an SDR and an E and so forth? Um, I think what you should keep in mind, taking on a larger team maybe around you or kind of below you, is have some fundamentals of how sales works and how CS works, right? So on the sales side and sales operations side, again, the fundamentals will be, instead of Marketo, someone will need to administer Salesforce and HubSpot CRM or something like that.
mm,
Um, this whole commission thing, wrap your head around it, but it's really just a math equation and an Excel spreadsheet at the end of the day. And I think what then sometimes is a bit more difficult, but it's not like you need to know all of that stuff. You need to be aware of it. It's like territory management and book of business. And there are a couple of those words or terms that maybe don't mean anything to you right now.
mm.
I think if you're the boss of someone for whom that means something, at least you should familiarize yourself with the
Yeah.
term. I don't think in turn that sales operations folks going into revenue operations have um, the same approach to marketing and trying to figure out, what is CPL, what MQL, that probably will know, but how does the ad set work, and how do these different reports? They usually are kind of a little bit oblivious in this, and it's like, well, and I'm kind of owning the whole thing. So my point really is, if you want to be RevOps, you will have a speciality somewhere. What you need to work on is add some of the other pieces to your repertoire, but ultimately understanding the revenue engine, kind of going end to end. I think that is really what qualifies you. And by the way, also upgrades you in your conversation with your boss or with your CEO to be the consultant that understands what happens if I tweak this thing over here. What's the butterfly effect further down the
Mm.
funnel? And having a kind of a gut feel and understanding of that, I think that's extremely, extremely useful for CEOs, trying to navigate this. And I think that at the end, that qualifies you to be, head of RevOps or RevOps manager or whatever.
Got it. So we did get another similar question to that, which is, I'm an account executive. How do I make the transition to RevOps? Are there any like resources specifically that you could recommend for someone who's maybe like not really familiar with RevOps at all, in terms of like the real day to day, but people
Mm.
that want to learn more about that?
So HubSpot has a great RevOps certification. There are a couple of other sources. I think probably RevGenius and so forth. You probably have lots of libraries to kind of read. Maybe you can expand on this, Adriana. But basically, I think as an AE, I think you need to voice it, that's what you want to do, right? Because
Mm,
usually that's seen as,
yeah.
oh, you don't want to be in this, or you don't want to be a manager or something like that. Just voicing it. Um, and make friends with the RevOps team. That will
Mm,
set you apart. At the end of the day, the RevOps team will need to be like, yeah, we're gonna work with Jake, or whatever
yeah.
your name might be. I don't know. I think what I think sometimes a little bit funny in some organizations that don't have any operations role.
Mm,
My joke is by now is, you might not have anyone being called that, but
yeah.
someone is doing that work for sure. If they're doing
Mm,
it programmatically or if they're doing it randomly, that's really just the difference.
yeah.
And usually the person that becomes the sales operation or the operations person in those organizations, usually it's the SDRE that has the cleanest CRM or is the most interested in the CRM and so forth.
Yeah.
So maybe make sure that that you're not being reminded so often of, I don't know, this whole sales ops stuff, like, fill in the fields and,
Yeah,
is this
like
validation
I
rule?
was.
Yeah.
Sales ops was always like, Adriana, what are you doing? I was like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know.
No, I
Honestly,
mean,
I'm probably like a RevOps person's worst nightmare. So,
this is another secret that I uncovered
mm,
myself with my co-founder here at Growblocks. So both of us very much RevOps people at heart.
mm,
But now here being at Growblocks, we are basically salespeople. right? Kind of
Yeah.
that's our job. And both of us found out that former RevOps people turning sales are the biggest CRM violators out there, right?
Oh no.
And yeah, and
That's
people
so
would not think
funny.
that actually, but it's,
No.
I'm convinced. My sample size is 2, so there's still some room, but I'm pretty sure that everyone in RevOps, once they're actually being put into a sales position, terrible at CRM hygiene. I can promise
Yeah.
you that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I do want to plug Rev Genius really quick. Rodreus, I'm so sorry. I'm kind of terrible with name pronunciation sometimes. Um, he was the one who asked about RevOps resources and everything. So I am the manager over at Rev Genius. We're a totally free community. We do have a RevOps community within the larger community, and everyone in there is super active, super helpful. So if you did want to join, you can go to revgenius.com/sign up. And then you can join our Slack community, and you're totally free to post in there, be like, hey guys, all of the RevOps experts, like, can someone talk to me kind of about this career path? People there are always super willing to help. So definitely recommend doing that. And then, so we do have another question from Jose, who actually asked, what cadence do you use or recommend for prioritization slash roadmaps? What meetings do you set, frequency, etc.?
Yeah. So I don't think I have like the stellar answer to that. I think the the way I would approach this question, right? So I don't have a great answer for pipeline meetings and forecasting meetings and some of that stuff. So apologies for that. I think what's pretty important though is depending on the size and the complexity of the organization, you will want to have different cadences
Mm,
around managing the revenue engine and assessing the health of that, right? So when I talk to folks at like Drift or Gong, kind of that basically kind of having that job, right? Basically, they have weekly sessions to figure out if they're still progressing to plan, where they're veering off, why they're veering off, how
yeah.
much that revenue impact is for the rest of the year, aka how big that issue actually is, and then tackling that immediately, right?
Mm,
So basically, kind of being like super high frequency about this. Um, if you do this only once a quarter in a QBR and have that post mortem, so to speak, you kind of rob yourself of all of these other opportunities you could have taken to jump in and course correct. But obviously, that's more on an operational level, right? I think monthly you have an opportunity to set something up that basically includes the different departmental leaders of the commercial engine and kind of update them. Hey, this is how we're tracking. This is what's behind. This is what's going well. This is what's coming up, right? And I think then on the quarterly level, you're basically checking whether or not you're tracking towards some of the strategic requirements. It sounds very nerdy, but saying it differently, kind of what needs to be true this year for your organization to hit the revenue target that you want to hit, right? And some of those things that need to be true, they might just really be slow moving, or it might be you might be just having kind of to looking at day by day, week by week, you might have just too many outliers there. So really on a quarterly level, really kind of deep dive, are we still on track? Are we executing the right strategy? Are we doing the right thing? And if not, what are we then doing instead, right? So
mm,
this is my specific view on the RevOps world. There's like obviously team meetings, we can talk about this, we can talk about like how do you prioritize incoming requests from other leaders, how do you deal with that stuff. But my Growblocks, maybe this is where I plug Growblocks now. My Growblocks perspective on this, really kind of we're trying to be the co-pilot to your revenue engine, right? Really
mm,
helping you kind of manage through that whole complexity, seeing stuff that's going off proactively instead of 3 months later, but really understanding how to use that with or without a tool to manage your organization to go towards the revenue target that you've chosen, right? Because what I've seen a lot and what I've heard a lot is really that the go-to-market execution piece is not the planning piece or the strategy or the budget. It's the go-to-market execution piece that usually is the one that breaks the plan, and
mm.
keeping really tight tabs on that, and course correcting immediately it's really difficult to do, especially in our like very tons of data, tons of tools, kind of complex world. But I think this is where revenue operations can deliver like revenue impacting value
Mhm.
instead of fixing the validation rule, for example, right?
Awesome. Okay, so I do kind of want to go back to your own experience, and
Yeah.
just kind of talk a little bit about like how your background in RevOps, how your experience as a CRO has kind of informed like your strategies now, as a CEO.
Yeah. Um, so I was, I read this, question before. This is one of the three questions we kind of, synced on, and I was like, screw that. How I'm gonna answer this, WTF? How I'm gonna answer that now? So the thing is, right, the company that we're building here very much has this revenue operations thinking in mind, right?
Mhm.
So I don't think we're building a RevOps tool, but we're applying some
Yeah.
of the RevOps methodologies in order to manage revenue and really make sure that you kind of hit your revenue target and so forth.
Mhm.
That aside, that's almost like a product strategy, if you will. I think on the flip side, because we're so deep into revenue operations, we have 30 people and we have 4 or 5 RevOps folks that are former RevOps folks, right? They're not
Mhm.
doing RevOps here. There's not much revenue opsing going on in a
Yeah.
company like this. But I would say we are all very level-headed. We're all
Mhm.
very oh no, we're emotional right now. Let's be level-headed again. and I think what is helpful though is if you have kind of a meta view on
Mhm.
on organization and so forth. It's obviously lots of chaos right now, because we're in this product market fit stage, right? And everything is chaotic, and you have a conversation and you learn something, and something changes over there. What is kind of cool is the team that I've assembled around me, kind of, or the co-founders have assembled around us, is basically it's those are adults, right? And I want to say maybe that's connected also to the RevOps piece, but it's also, yes, we are in this chaotic stage right now. There's nothing to do about it. It's like we can't plan our way out of this. We kind of need
Mhm.
to make sure that we try and stay as aligned as possible. We need to make sure that
Yeah.
we keep trusting each other as much as possible. And try and work our way through this until we get to a point where the waters are a bit smoother, we can see a bit more clearly, maybe a bit further
Mhm.
ahead. And you can say, hey, this is maybe common sense. You can say this is like a grown-up approach, or this is like a boring approach. Maybe right now I just want to coin it. Maybe that's the RevOps approach to building companies.
Mhm.
so so I think that's maybe that's a good angle
Yeah,
for
you
the
got to
answer.
trademark it now.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay, so I do kind of want to dive into a little bit about like what really excites you about the future of revenue operations. Like this is definitely a department, strategy that's kind of, I think, pretty new still, in the
Yeah.
industry, is often a little bit misunderstood. But what are you
Yeah.
like most looking forward to and excited about?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious answer is like AI and automation and all that stuff. So I'm not excited about that necessarily for RevOps. There will be tons of things coming out of it, though.
Mhm.
I think what I'm excited about is that revenue operations, sales operations, all of that stuff has been birthed out of the need for someone to manage the CRM. That was the idea. Or we need someone because the VP of sales can't connect outreach to HubSpot or whatever,
Mhm.
right? And kind of that was the problem. And now someone needs to come in and do it. What has happened now, though, is because you have all of those tools, you need to be an expert, and gluing this together is like really difficult.
Mhm.
And you really want to try and, in order to do a good job, you need to understand all of these different things. You talk to the marketing folks, you talk to the sales reps, you talk to the CS folks, um, and what happens, by way of you integrating all of those tools, what happens is you become a full-on consultant expert of that company's revenue organization, right? And I think
Mhm.
what a couple of companies have woken up to in the past now is, wait a minute, why do we have those people with, by the way, usually coming from like educated background and so forth?
Yeah.
Why do we have those people that are complete experts in our business? Why do we have them running around implementing tools? Why shouldn't they be doing some other stuff here instead, right? And I think this is what I'm excited about, where the coin is going to drop and people are going to realize, yes, they're good at implementing tools, but because they've been implementing tools, they actually understand the whole business, front to back. And now we can use that insight, that skill, that experience, we can use it and leverage it for other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think this shift is probably gonna happen more and more.
Awesome. Okay, guys, so we have a few minutes left. So if you have any other questions that you would like for Tony to answer, definitely put them in the chat. I see Jose said outreach to HubSpot sucks, which did make me laugh a little. But yeah, would love to just learn a little bit more about you. I know we already heard a little bit about like your career story and everything, but tell us a little bit about what you like to do outside of work. Just a little bit more about yourself.
So I'm a CEO founder.
Yeah.
No, it's no, I mean, I've like, wonderful. So I actually am from Germany originally, kind of here in
Nice.
Denmark. A wonderful family at home, 2 kids, 2 cats. If people want to hear more of me, I also have a podcast here at GrowBlogs. You can check me out on LinkedIn. There's a link and everything. We actually are going to host what we're going to call a GTM Live in 2 weeks. It's not announced
Oh,
yet.
nice.
Soft launch, I guess. So if anyone wants to join there, we're going to talk about, a couple of, actually this specific one is the modern GTM framework that we're going to discuss and talk about. And the idea is almost similar to this year, like 20 minutes, maybe presentation, 40 minutes, community group discussion. So if anyone want to join, connect with me and, hit me up. I'm happy to kind of send you the sign up link. No, but otherwise, I'm originally from Germany. I love Denmark. I will never go back to Germany. If you haven't been to Denmark, Copenhagen, totally check it out.
Nice.
I lived in New York for 3 years. I know that New York is not the US and all of that stuff, but I can tell you some areas, some corners of Europe, fantastic. Copenhagen, very much fantastic. Come here in the summer though. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible weather. Come here for 2 months, and that's why.
Yeah, and then leave. I'm from Florida originally, so it's like if it gets rainy for more than like 24 hours, honestly, like I get like seasonal depression.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
will be visiting,
Yeah.
but definitely only in the sunny months. I don't think
There
I
you
could
go.
deal with the winter there. But awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Tony. Super fun
Happy to.
conversation. I know that you mentioned that people could reach out on LinkedIn. So if anyone's watching, has an additional questions, wants to attend your super awesome event that's coming up, definitely make sure to connect with Tony on there. If you are interested in joining Rev Genius as a member or just want to learn more about what we do, please feel free to connect with me or message me, or check out our website, which is revgenius.com. Molly will be back next week hosting. So we will see you guys in our next episode of WTF is RevOps. But hope everyone has an amazing rest of your Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for being here.